Hello, I'm the artist Michael Zotos, and I'm the one who's been putting his art pieces out on Eastern Long Island for the past 8 years or so. Okay, and I've had quite a bit of success with it, which I'm going to explain in a few minutes. But it's come what I call full circle at this point, and I'm going to explain that now. All right, I began by creating. I'm an outsider artist. I create my artwork outside. I show it outside, okay? And I'm outside the basic, usual art world, so to speak. Most artists are associated and connected with art guilds, art schools, and that's where they emanate from, and they have art people around them. I'm more involved with the community, with the people of the street, and now at this phase with the small business owners on Eastern Long Island. I've put my pieces, which are about this size, and there are various different ones of them, in business yards over the last 6 years or so, consistently. And I get permission from the business owners, and I put them out there on a display of usually 3 to 5 pieces, sometimes 7 to 10 pieces, okay? And they get a lot of notoriety. Business owners have me to bring them back each year sometimes. They don't usually want me to take them away because they do add to on the front lawn, okay? And there's a lot of conversation about it. As I've been saying, I've had them in 40 different business yards, okay? And as many as more than 60 out at a time, depending on how you count them. Okay, I make something like this with a companion weed. If you count the weed, there's more like 70 of them out there. Now, I say it's come full circle, and this is what I'm going to explain. I started by showing my art pieces in New York City on easels. They're stands that I created. Now, this is a kind of an early piece that I put up, and I put them on stands in parks. They're paved parks, like Union Square Park, other ones up by Columbus Circle in Manhattan, New York City. And I also would show them in Soho, which is south of Houston Street on West Broadway Avenue, and sometimes at Chelsea. Chelsea is really where there are a lot of galleries, and I'd go in and out of the galleries and talk to the gallery owners. In fact, I had a little mini gallery in a hallway on the 6th floor of a building for about 9 months, where I got to meet a lot of the gallery owners and find out what goes on behind the scenes. So what I was doing there was getting some really good, like, back lot type knowledge, okay, what goes on in the art world. Because you go into the city and you see these artists, galleries, museums, and very high prices of things, and you wonder what's really going on. And I got a good thorough knowledge of that. You talk to people in the street, artists who are in the street who come out every weekend, okay, and you gain knowledge from that, okay. You also gain knowledge as to what's not the case that you hear. And from there, what happened was I took these pieces and I went to some galleries and I wanted to put them in there for sale at these nice prices and all. And what I was told up into the spring of the year, this was 2012, I believe, is that nobody's here. They're all out east. So I said, well, out east, what do you mean? And they told me in the Hamptons. So I went out east, and I noticed it was packed full of traffic, okay? And so I took some pieces similar to this one I just showed you, and just made them bald white pieces about the size of a person, and I put those out on the highways, just anonymously, attached it to a piece of bed frame pipe and stuck them in the ground here and there. Not many, 4, and left them, and they stayed through the Memorial Day weekend and into the like a week or two, and then they started disappearing. And I talked to the sheriffs out there, and they said, it's fine, you could do that, don't go crazy with it, but don't put them in the, they called it the easement. What they meant was under the power lines, where they pull off people, and they don't want to pull off into one of these characters. So I continued to do that, and then I went back to the city and showed my pieces, and people would stop and say, "Hey, I saw that out east. Oh, can I take pictures with that? That was out east, to the Hamptons." And I realized quickly that the same people are going out east and in the city, and they're traveling. Okay, there's a lot of that, which I like to do. I like to travel too. So I started to make pieces that I could leave on the telephone poles and color them up. I'm going to show you a few, okay? Without the back, just this piece here. I would make them. They're small, very easy to make because there's only one side to it, and you just nail it to the telephone pole and leave it there. And then here's another image, okay? And I made 6 dozen ultimately, and I put them out, and I did not stop doing what I was doing in the city. It kind of overlaps at that phase. I had 6 dozen, then another 2 dozen. I started videotaping these, put the videotapes on YouTube. In the meantime, I have some archival footage of pieces of work that I did before. In other words, how I basically got to this stage in the making of these pieces. The primitive characters and all from like '09, all right? And I put a couple of videos of that up on YouTube also. So I started to get press coverage in 2014. The Southampton Press did an article that surprised me, but it was not a moment too soon, because I was just, you're out there doing, and you don't really know. You do talk to people, you show them photographs of it, and they say, "Oh yeah, we know about that," and they get talking. They seem to know more about it than I did, but now it's in the newspaper, okay? And they actually came to my house and did an interview with me and got my thoughts and all. But now you're seeing it in a newspaper, and a newspaper that people buy, okay? And they take it home and they open it up on the dining room table. And the family looks at it for a week or whatever. They call all the neighbors. No, they just, it's there. All right, and I continued to put them out, and then I began putting them in business yards, the tall ones, like so, all right, and you get an idea. Well, let's make a display. Let's put 3. Let's put 6. I presented it to Duckwalk Vineyard, who said bring a dozen, and I brought a dozen. I happen to have been working on them. It seems to happen that when you work on these artwork pieces, and then you look for a place to put them, there's a place, okay? Well, when I had a dozen of them at Duckwalk Vineyard, that kind of opened it up for me, because then after that, every place I went to with my pieces would say, "Yeah, bring them in." And it would surprise me. I'd say, "Well, where do you want them? How do you want them to run?" "Oh no, you're the artist, you do that." "Your front lawn? You're in business how many years, and I'm going to show up, unload the truck?" "Yeah, okay." So that was the conversation. That was what happened. Well, ultimately, I ended up in 7 newspapers between 2014 and 2019. Okay. Now, if it was 7 newspapers over 30 years, that wouldn't really be a tight did something. But I feel it's come full circle. I did a lot, and I feel that's a form of success. Everybody that sees them likes them. I show pictures to people, and they tell me which ones they like better than the others, so I go more in that direction. Okay. For example, people just seem to like these kinds of eyes. Ooh, how long did it take you to figure out how to make it like that? Well, about as long as it takes to sit there with a paintbrush. About 6 years, And then you put the same or similar eye on the other one. See, the little specks on there. But it's a squiggly thing. I make it, and it's kind of cool. But my point is that this is a very, you get a lot out of it, okay? These pieces are working while I'm home. You put them out there, people like it, and it's come full circle. They've done stories in 7 newspapers. The final story was in, which I'm going to get to in a moment. I'm going to show you these newspapers, okay? But the final story to date, because we're now in 2020, 2019, okay, September 25th or 6th, the Southampton Press again, they did the first story in 2014. Now it comes to 2019. They did a story on the spots where my pieces were located, and they called them destination spots, where you could take selfies and take pictures. In other words, we're no longer about the pieces out on the highways, but actually located at this business and that. They named all the businesses they were at, my pieces on the South Fork, okay? And eventually in 2014, I started to get press coverage, okay? Here's an article from the Southampton Press, and that's the cover, the top of it, and then the Arts and Living section, put a picture in there. And then on the next page, there's an actual picture of the art on the telephone pole itself, okay, as you can see. Now what they do is they interview you, they come out, and about a month later it shows up in the newspaper. Now here's the Dan's Papers did an article, okay, and art on the East End, and that's my art pieces, okay, that they featured in the paper, and they did a bit of a story. There's some talk on it on the back of the page here, and this was actually done by Dan himself of Dan's Papers. Then in 2017, I put them on. I was putting them now in the business yards, okay, large full-size pieces, the size of a person, and I started putting them on the North Fork as well as the South Fork and the East End Beacon. Okay, as you can see, the paper is a little spliced so I can make this showing, but there's the article, Spontaneous Entities of the East End, and they show a picture of one, and they give conversation. And then on another page in the same newspaper, okay, this is the October edition, they did quite a layout showing pictures of my pieces. Now this piece right here, this photograph, is in the schoolyard in Bridgehampton School, which is kindergarten through 12th grade, and the students get to see it whenever they go out to their garden. So that's nice, and that's in the newspaper. Then the Riverhead News Review, which has a sister paper called the Suffolk Times, did an article. And again, they came out to the house. This is a picture of me making a piece of work in my living room. And then there's a piece out on the highway on the same page. They did a pretty nice job, I think. And, you know, these are newspapers people buy. And they take them home and they open them up on the dining room table. It's not something like just an art paper per se. Here's the Southampton Press now. They did a story at September of 2019. Now, this is spliced together so you can see the cover of the paper, Southampton Press, and then that's the Arts and Living section. And in the Arts and Living section, they did Just Call Him Spontaneous, and another with a picture of my art character and me, and a man who has a hot tubs company in the Southampton. And then on another page in the same paper, they did a nice spread of pictures, and over here, this is a column full of a dozen destination spots where you can see my pieces on the highways in business yards. Okay, let's get in kind of close. That's me with my little prop hat there. But these are some of the places where they were located. Now I've had them in 40 different business yards. Pretty much everybody I talk to out there, if I ask if I can put pieces in their yard, they say yes, unless either it's corporate and the owners and the management isn't on the premises and have not seen my art because they're in the city or Queens or Nassau County or something and they don't get out there much, or if they're going for permits on something or they've had problems, they don't really feel like, you know, adding to the pie and having, you know, additional things out there for the town or village to see. But I've had a lot of fun with it, and everybody out there knows my artwork. People come out from the cities. People come out from Brooklyn, Queens, Manhattan, New Jersey, Nassau County, all over Suffolk County. There's quite a bit goes on the east end of Long Island. There's pumpkin picking on the South Fork and the North Fork. There's a lot of people come out there and just live in the summertime. It's very nice, and they've all seen my art firsthand. They talk about it, and it's very gratifying. It's a lot of fun, and so that's why I now moving forward. Okay, the new decade, 2020. What I'm going to be doing is something a little different. Okay, I'm going to be making videos rather than every year, because what I've been doing now is making videos of the displays each year. 2013, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. At this stage, what I'm going to do, because I think it's getting a little redundant, just showing these short videos of locations where my artworks are and the displays themselves. What I'm going to do forward is little talks on things I've learned. Things I've learned